So just moments ago, former President Donald Trump landing at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Rick Fulbaum.
And I'm Lana Harris. We have Atlanta News First reporter Rebecca Schramm out there right now. Rebecca, Trump's motorcade is now on the road, and everybody doesn't get the invite this time around. He is heading to an undisclosed location somewhere here in the area.
That is exactly right, Lana and Rick. Good afternoon to you. Former President Donald Trump's plane landed at 11:17, not far from where we are right now. And he talked to reporters a little bit. The crowd cheered as he walked off the plane. They cheered when he walked up to them. He is hoping that he'll have that kind of energy at the fundraiser today. After week's record-breaking fundraiser in Palm Beach, Florida, where his campaign raked in more than $50 million, former President Donald Trump is hoping the Atlanta fundraiser will be successful as well, helping him to further close his campaign's financial gap. Here's what he said before the Florida event. People are just wanting change. The rich people want it, poor people want it, everybody wants change. Our country is really doing poorly. Hosting the Georgia are some of the state's wealthiest citizens, including co-founder of the Home Depot, Bernie Marcus, and former U.S. Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. Both were defeated 4 years ago by Democrats in the same election cycle that saw Joe Biden become the first Democrat to win Georgia's presidential election since 1992. Biden's team criticized Trump for the high-dollar event in Florida, saying the American people deserve a president that fights for Main Street, not Wall Street. Now, it's that Georgia's top elected officials are not listed as honorary guests at the fundraiser. Not Brian Kemp, not Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, and not Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. My colleague Doug Reardon is traveling with the motorcade, and he is going to have updates for you throughout the afternoon and evening. We're live at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Rebecca Schramm, Atlanta News First.